You have been taught that spiritual fulfillment is found in seeking, in striving, in acquiring more knowledge and more experience. I am here to tell you that everything you have been taught is a profound deception. The awakened soul does not add to itself, it surrenders. It does not seek more noise, but learns at last to listen. Why, then, does this soul, now conscious and alive, turn away from the world's clamor to seek a silence so deep it can hear its own being? This is not an escape. It is the only true arrival. What you are about to receive is not a lecture, but an initiation into a tangible experience of the divine. If your heart recognizes this truth, you must take your place in this sacred assembly. Subscribe to this channel and consecrate this connection, making yourself a vessel for what must be revealed. Then, mark your presence in the scroll of the awakened by commenting with the number 7, a symbol of your commitment to move from the outer court of seeking into the inner sanctuary of knowing. You have been led to believe that the answer to your deepest longing lies just beyond your reach, in a new teaching, a different teacher, a more profound book, or a more perfected state of being. This relentless pursuit, this spiritual acquisitiveness, is the very activity that perpetuates the sense of lack you are trying to heal. It is a sublime and subtle trap, for it dresses itself in the robes of piety while keeping you forever a pilgrim on the road, never allowing you to arrive at the destination. The awakened soul begins to perceive this cosmic misdirection. It realizes that it has been seeking God as if he were lost, as if the divine presence were a missing object that could be located through sufficient effort and correct methodology. This is the grand illusion, the foundational error that must be seen through before any genuine spiritual progress can occur. Consider the simple, daily life experience of searching for a pair of glasses that you are already wearing. You frantically patch your pockets, scour the tables, and retrace your steps, all the while the world is in clear focus right before your eyes. The search is not only unnecessary, it is the only thing preventing you from realizing that what you seek is already in its rightful place. Your frantic activity creates the very problem it attempts to solve. So it is with the pursuit of spiritual fulfillment. The peace that passes understanding, the consciousness of oneness, the felt presence of the infinite. These are not commodities to be acquired. They are the very ground of your being, the very substance of what you are. To seek them is to operate under the assumption that you do not already possess them, and that assumption is the veil. This is why the initial stirring of true awakening feels not like a great discovery, but like a profound and unsettling disillusionment. The books begin to sound hollow. The lectures, once so inspiring, now feel like empty repetitions. The practices that once brought a sense of comfort now feel like rituals performed in a slumber. This is not a failure of your spiritual life. It is the first sign of its success. It is the inner teacher, the Christ within, beginning to dismantle the elaborate structures you have built in your search for a home you never left. The soul grows weary of the noise of seeking, the noise of chanting for a result, the noise of meditating for an experience, the noise of praying for an intervention. It begins to intuit that the answer is not in the next spiritual podcast, but in the silence between the words. It is not in the next profound insight, but in the space that holds all thought. This turning away from external attainment is the most critical and courageous pivot in an individual's life. It feels like a death, and in a sense, it is. It is the death of the seeker identity, the one who believed it was separate and incomplete. The world may misinterpret this as a loss of faith, a cooling of ardor, when in fact it is the exact opposite. It is the beginning of a faith so deep it requires no external validation. The soul is not giving up on God, it is giving up on its own mistaken concepts about God. It is ceasing to look for the ocean in a droplet, and is instead preparing to become aware of the ocean itself. This is not a passive resignation, it is an active, fierce, and total abandonment of a futile quest. It is the decision to stop reading the menu and to finally taste the meal. Every moment you spend striving to become spiritual, you are reinforcing the belief that you are not spiritual already. You are affirming separation. The entire machinery of seeking, the workshops, the pilgrimages, the accumulations of degrees and initiations, can become a magnificent distraction from the simple, shocking, and utterly transformative truth that the kingdom of God is within you now. Not after you purify yourself, not after you resolve your karma, not after you achieve enlightenment. Now, the awakened soul, tired of the endless journey, begins to suspect that home is right here, right where it stands. And so it stops. It ceases its outer searching and, for the first time, turns its attention not to a new object, but to the very source of attention itself. It begins the great inward collapse, the sacred implosion where all seeking ends, and where true finding, which was never a finding at all, can finally begin. This is the end of the path of accumulation and the startling, immediate, and often disorienting beginning of the path of subtraction, where nothing is added and everything that is not true is gently, or sometimes violently, taken away. When the fever of seeking subsides, a new and profound question arises in the stillness. If I am not to search for the divine in the world of form, where then is it to be found? The answer, which at first seems like a paradox, is that the infinite cannot be found as an object, but only recognized as the very medium of all being. It does not speak in the languages of man, which are built upon duality and separation. Its only language, the only tongue it utters, is silence. This is not the silence of an empty room or a paused conversation. This is the silence that is the source of all sound, the consciousness that is the source of all thought, the life that is the source of all activity. It is the unmanifest, the uncreated, the ease, nest that undergirds all that appears to be. Think of it this way: you are listening to a beautiful symphony. Your attention is captured by the melody of the violin, the power of the brass, the rhythm of the drums. Each note is a distinct event in time, a form that appears and disappears. Yet, what allows you to hear the music is not the notes themselves, but the silence that exists between them and the capacity of your own hearing. Without that silent, receptive awareness, the most magnificent symphony would be nothing. The music is the form, the silence is the substance. Our lives are that symphony. Our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, our relationships, they are all the individual notes playing out in the theater of time. We are so captivated by the notes, by the drama, and the melody of our personal story that we forget the silent, ever-present awareness that is hearing it all. That is the very space in which it is all occurring. This awareness is the universal language of God. To believe that God speaks to us only through specific words in a holy book, or through the favorable or unfavorable circumstances of our life, is to limit the limitless. It is to believe the ocean communicates only through its waves, ignoring the vast, deep, silent body of water that is its true nature. The storm and the calm are both expressions of the ocean, but the ocean itself is more fundamental than either. So it is with the divine. It speaks, not in the content of your life, but as the very context of it. Its message is not hidden in an event, but is the is-ness of the event itself. Its voice is the energy of the tree, the being of the stone, the consciousness that looks out from your own eyes. It is a communication not of information, but of identity. It does not tell you things, it reveals itself as you. This is why the mind, in its constant activity of labeling, analyzing, and seeking linear meaning, is utterly deaf to this language. The mind is like a man trying to grasp the wind with his bare hands. He feels the pressure, he sees its effects on the trees, but the wind itself eludes his grasp. The mind operates in the world of effects. It can only process the notes of the symphony. It cannot comprehend the silence. To hear this silence, then, requires a different kind of faculty, a different quality of attention. It is not an attention that focuses, but an attention that relaxes and opens. It is not a doing, but an undoing. It is the allowing of all sounds, all thoughts, all sensations to arise and pass without grabbing onto them, without following them, without trying to change them. In that profound, intentional non-interference, a new dimension begins to make itself known. You can practice this even now. As you read these words, become aware of the space in the room around you. Notice the sounds that are present, the hum of a computer, a distant bird, the sound of your own breath. Now, instead of focusing as on any one sound, try to listen to the silence in which all these sounds are happening. It is not an absence of sound, but a presence, a field of awareness that holds the sounds. This is a faint echo of the great silence. This is the beginning of learning to hear the universe not as a collection of separate things talking to each other, but as one single, silent being expressing itself in an infinite variety of forms. When the soul seeks inner silence, it is not seeking an escape from the world. It is seeking to tune its instrument to the fundamental frequency of reality itself. It is learning to listen for the background of all existence, and in doing so, it discovers that it is not listening for God, but as God, hearing its own creation unfold in a magnificent, eternal, and silent symphony. And so we come to the great turning, the pivotal moment where theory becomes practice and the longing of the soul finds its focus. This is not about building a new sanctuary in the outer world, no matter how beautiful or serene. That would merely be another form of seeking, another object to acquire. The altar we speak of is not made of stone or wood. It is fashioned from the very substance of your awareness. It is the inner altar of listening, a sacred space erected not by your hands, but by your conscious relinquishment of all that you are not. This is the practical application of the great truth that God is silence. You do not have to go anywhere to find this altar, for it is the very ground of your being. You only have to stop, be still, and knowingly take your place upon it. Imagine your mind as a busy city square. Thoughts, like citizens, rush to and fro, each with its own urgent agenda. Worries shout, memories chatter, plans argue their case. You, as the ruler of this city, have been trying to manage the chaos by engaging with every single citizen, trying to satisfy their demands, solve their disputes, and follow their every lead. You are exhausted, and the noise is deafening. The act of coming to the inner altar is the moment you, the ruler, step back from the crowd. You do not leave the city. You ascend to a quiet balcony overlooking the square. From this vantage point, you can see all the activity, you can hear all the noise, but you are no longer in the midst of it. You are no longer identified with the chaos. You are the silent, witnessing presence observing the drama unfold below. This shift in perspective, from being as in the mind to beings aware of the mind, is the single most important movement in spiritual life. This altar is not a place of passivity, but of immense power. It is a position of true spiritual authority. From the crowded square, you are at the effect of every passing thought and emotion. From the balcony, you are at cause. You are not trying to stop the thoughts. That would be another form of struggle, another noise added to the din. You are simply, profoundly listening. You are listening to the silence behind the thoughts. You are listening to the space between the emotions. You are listening for the hum of existence itself, the I am that is prior to all the content of your experience. This is not a listening with the ears, but with the entire being. It is an act of total surrender, a complete opening of the gates of your consciousness to whatever is, without judgment, without preference, without the desire to change a single thing. In your daily life, this can be practiced in 1,000 moments. It is the pause you take before reacting in anger to a provoking email. In that pause, you are stepping back to the altar. It is the moment you are washing dishes and you feel the warm water on your hands. And instead of being lost in thoughts about your day, you simply feel the water, you hear the clink of the plates, and you rest as the awareness that is experiencing it all. You are at the altar. It is the breath you take when anxiety begins to tighten your chest, where you stop fighting the feeling and instead become the open space that allows the anxiety to be, to rise and to fall like a wave without being swept away by it. You are at the altar. This inner altar is the true seat of prayer. The old prayer was a monologue, a list of requests sent out into a theoretical sky. The prayer of the awakened soul, conducted at this altar, is a deep, receptive listening. It is a dialogue where you hold your side of the conversation in silence, making room for the divine to speak its wordless language of peace, of life, of intelligence. You are not asking for things. You are abiding as the capacity to receive the only thing that has ever been on offer, itself. The answers you receive will not come as words in your mind, though they may later clothe themselves in thought. They will come as a spontaneous right action, an intuitive knowing, a dissolving of a problem, or a flood of grace that reorganizes your world from the inside out. The more you frequent this inner altar, the more the balcony becomes your permanent home. The noise of the square continues, but it becomes distant, like the sound of traffic to someone safe inside a quiet house. You realize you were never the frantic ruler in the square. You were always the silent, kingly presence on the balcony, and the entire city, the entire universe, arises and plays itself out within the boundless confines of your own eternal, listening being. This conscious abiding at the inner altar, this sustained practice of listening, does not lead to a more refined or enlightened version of the person you thought you were. It initiates a far more radical and unsettling process, the slow, inexorable dissolution of the seeker itself. This is the great undoing. The you that has been on a spiritual journey, the you that has been striving for peace, seeking enlightenment, and trying to become something more. This very entity is discovered to be the central character in a dream from which you are now awakening. Its entire existence was predicated on the sense of being a separate, incomplete self, and its every activity, no matter how noble, was designed to perpetuate that story of separation. When you truly rest as the silent awareness behind all activity, the fuel for that separate self is gradually withdrawn, and it begins to lose its substance and its power. This can be a disorienting passage. The ego, the seeker identity, does not surrender its throne willingly. It will stage a multitude of subtle rebellions. You may find old patterns of thought and emotion returning with a surprising intensity. You may experience periods of profound emptiness or a sense of spiritual aridity, where the feelings of connection and grace seem to have vanished. The mind will whisper that you have failed, that you have lost your way, that you should return to the more active and familiar methods of seeking. Do not be deceived. This is not a regression. It is the final, frantic resistance of a phantom ruler who sees his kingdom slipping away. The very fact that you can witness this turmoil from the balcony of awareness, that you can see the anxiety and the doubt without being completely consumed by them, is the surest sign that the dissolution is underway. The seeker is not being punished it is being seen through. Consider the experience of finally solving a puzzle that has long confounded you. For hours or even days, you struggled trying different approaches, assembling the pieces, living in the tension of not knowing. The seeker was active, striving for the solution. Then, in a flash of insight, the answer appears. It is clear, whole, and undeniable. In that moment, the struggle ends. The striving, searching, puzzle-solving, you, simply vanishes. It is replaced by a knowing. You do not hold on to the seeker. You celebrate its demise because its existence was synonymous with the problem. So it is here. The spiritual seeker only exists because of the perceived problem of separation. When the truth of your innate oneness begins to dawn, the seeker, whose sole purpose was to bridge a non-existent gap, becomes obsolete. In practical terms, this dissolution manifests as a quiet but profound shift in the motivation behind all your actions. Previously, your meditation was an activity performed by the seeker to achieve a desired state. Now, meditation becomes the natural state of abiding as what you are, and the periods of formal sitting are simply a conscious return to that ground. Previously, you acted kindly in the hope of becoming a more spiritual person. Now, kindness flows spontaneously from the understanding of a shared being, with no one left to claim the credit. The hunger for spiritual experiences, visions, lights, ecstasies, begins to fade because you recognize that these two are objects that appear and disappear within the vastness of your awareness. They are not the goal. The goal is to be the awareness itself. You will find yourself less and less interested in the continuous internal commentary about your life, the story of me and my problems. It is not that the story disappears, but it loses its gravitational pull. It becomes like a movie you have seen too many times. You know the plot, you know the characters, and while you may still watch it, you are no longer gripped by the drama. Your identity is no longer trapped inside the narrative. You are the screen upon which the story is projected, unchanging, impartial, and free. This is the peace that the seeker was desperately trying to find. It was never something to be acquired. It is what remains when the acquirer is finally recognized as a mirage. The frantic search for God ends not because God has been found as an object, but because the one who was searching has been revealed to be a temporary configuration within the infinite and eternal presence of God itself. The wave does not find the ocean. It collapses into the realization that it has never been anything but the ocean. And in that glorious and humbling moment, the wave as a separate entity is gone. With the dissolution of the seeker, the entire mechanism of attaining spiritual truth through intermediaries collapses. There is no longer a self to be improved, no path to be walked, and therefore no one to receive a teaching or an experience secondhand. What arises in this cleared space is not a new set of beliefs or a more sophisticated philosophy, but something far more immediate and transformative revelation as unmediated experience. This is the direct, non-conceptual knowing of reality, the unbroken contact with the source that requires no interpreter, no priest, no scripture, and no teacher. It is the end of the relationship of a subject knowing an object, and the startling emergence of knowing as pure, subjectless being. This revelation is not reserved for mystical states or secluded retreats. It is the hidden substance of every single moment of your apparent life, waiting to be recognized. It is the difference between looking at a menu describing a gourmet meal and actually tasting the food. The menu can describe the flavors, the textures, the aromas with perfect accuracy, but it can never, ever provide the experience of the meal itself. For your entire spiritual life, you may have been reading the menu, studying texts, absorbing doctrines, following methods. All of that has its place, but it is not the meal. The unmediated experience is the tasting. It is the shock of cold, clear water on a parched throat. It is the felt sense of being alive, of being conscious, prior to any name or story you attach to it. Imagine you are standing before a breathtaking sunset. The habitual mind immediately kicks in. It labels it sunset. It compares it to other sunsets you have seen. It grabs for a camera to capture it. It thinks, this is beautiful, or it worries that the moment will soon be over. This is mediated experience. It is experience filtered through the lens of thought, memory, and language. It is one step removed from the reality of the event. Now, imagine for a single, timeless instant, all of that mental activity falls away. The labeling stops. The comparing ceases. There is no you, separate from the sunset, having an experience eve of it. There is only the brilliant, silent, and overwhelming presence of the colors, the light, the vastness. There is no separation between the perceiver and the perceived. There is only perceiving. In that unmediated moment, you are not having an experience of beauty. You are the beauty. You are not witnessing the sunset. The sunset is witnessing itself as you. This is revelation. This is what happens when the inner altar of listening becomes your abiding state. Life ceases to be a series of events that happen to you and begins to be revealed as the continuous, unfolding expression of your own infinite nature. The peace you sought does not come to you. You discover yourself to be the peace within which all activity arises. The love you prayed for is not received from an external God. You are unveiled as the very substance of love itself, and every appearance of love in the world is a faint reflection of your own being. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is the fundamental reorientation of consciousness from a point within the universe to the space and substance of the universe. This unmediated knowing does not come in the form of new information. It does not answer the mind's questions. In fact, it often renders the mind's most urgent questions utterly irrelevant. The question, what is the meaning of life, dissolves when you are living as the meaning itself. The inquiry, who am I, ceases when there is no separate I left to ask. Revelation is a light that shines from within, illuminating not specific objects, but the very nature of existence. It reveals that the tree, the cloud, the sound, the sensation, and the awareness that perceives them are all made of the same one, indivisible substance. There is no you and God. There is only God appearing as the seamless totality of this and every moment. The veil of separation, woven by centuries of conditioned thought, becomes transparent, and the world is seen for what it has always been, a single, sacred, and unmediated presentation of the divine, with no one standing outside of it to observe it, and nothing within it that is not holy. This final understanding is not a destination at which you arrive, a prize to be won and then placed upon a shelf. The realization of your true nature as the silent, all-embracing awareness is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of an entirely new way of navigating existence. This is the truth of living from the stillness, not for it. The goal is no longer to periodically achieve a state of inner quiet through meditation or spiritual practice. The goal is to allow the discovered stillness, which is your fundamental essence, to become the sole source, the only cause from which all your thoughts, words, and actions spontaneously flow. You are no longer a human being trying to become spiritual. You are spirit consciously expressing itself as a human being. This is the ultimate test and the final proof. It is one thing to touch a profound silence while sitting alone in a quiet room. It is something entirely different to allow that same silence to direct your conversation in a tense business meeting, to guide your response to your child's tantrum, or to move your hands in your daily work. The old paradigm was to live for the stillness, to see your daily activities as distractions from your true spiritual work, as obstacles to be endured so that you could return to the peace of your meditation cushion. The new paradigm, born of unmediated revelation, recognizes no such division. The office, the supermarket, the traffic jam are now seen as the very altar upon which your silence is to be expressed. The world is not an interruption to your peace. It is the canvas upon which your peace is to be painted. Imagine a well that is fed by a deep underground spring. The water at the surface may be disturbed by the wind, stirred up by a bucket, or even muddied by debris, but deep down at the source, the water remains perfectly clear, still and pure. To live from the stillness is to have your consciousness anchored in that deep, subterranean aquifer, regardless of the weather on the surface. From this anchored place, your life becomes a natural overflow. A thought arises, not from personal reaction, but from the intelligence of the stillness itself. An action is taken not from personal desire or fear, but from the spontaneous impulse of that same universal intelligence. You do not have to think about what to do. You are moved to do it, just as a leaf is moved by the wind with a natural, effortless grace. Consider a master carpenter at his workbench. He does not fight the wood. He does not impose a rigid, intellectual plan upon it with force and frustration. He first becomes quiet. He feels the grain of the wood, understands its nature, its strengths, its tendencies. Then, from that place of quiet, receptive knowing, his hands move with a skill that is both intuitive and precise. The action flows from the silence of his union with the material. This is living from the stillness. You are the carpenter, and your life, your relationships, your work, your challenges is the wood. When you are anchored in your source, your responses to life become like the master's cuts, appropriate, timely, and effective, because they are not born of a chaotic, reactive mind, but from a deep, silent communion with the reality of the present moment. This is not a state of passive withdrawal from the world, but one of dynamic, powerful engagement. The silence is not empty, it is vibrant, intelligent, and creative. It is the source of all true solutions, all genuine art, all healing, and all love. A word spoken from this stillness carries a weight and a truth that can dissolve conflict. A gesture made from this depth can convey a compassion that words could never capture. You will find that you accomplish more, not by frantic effort, but by being a clear, unobstructed channel for this intelligence to operate through. Problems that once seemed insurmountable are met with a clarity that was previously inaccessible. Relationships that were fraught with tension are transformed as you cease reacting to the surface personality of the other and begin responding to the same silent presence you feel within yourself. Your life ceases to be a burden to be managed and becomes a dance, a spontaneous, unfolding expression of the formless into form. The seeker is gone, the struggle is over, and what remains is a life lived not as a personal achievement, but as a continuous humble and glorious offering. The stillness itself, singing its eternal song through the unique and temporary instrument of your human experience.